What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Standing Guillotine podcast. Today is going to be a solo effort. It's just me today. Apparently, Ryan has these things called friends and obligations to those friends. I don't know, man. That sounds like some bullshit to me. But regardless, the show goes on. It will just be me, which is honestly kind of a shame, but it's a throwback to our very first episode here. So let's see if I can't bottle some magic and hopefully we'll get Ryan back on here so we can get some controversial opinions flowing. But I want to talk today about UFC Fight Night. This was Vegas 74. This was Kai Kara France versus Amir Albazi, and it's tough to talk about anything other than this card, anything other than the final fight on this card. This fight had an extremely controversial ending. So if we look at that, it was a split decision victory for Amir Albazi. I had the fight 4-1 Kara France. And I could see an argument for 2-3. Or sorry, for 3-2, not 2-3. But he ended up losing 2-3, which is not something that I could see an argument for. There was really no agreement across the judges, with one judge having Amir Albazi winning round 1 and another judge having Amir Albazi winning round 4. And that's what caused that kind of split. So somehow they managed to pull out 3 rounds. So if we look into the scoring here, I mean, honestly, it was there wasn't a scenario where I think the judging was correct. Like, if we look at the rounds themselves, if you go back and watch the individual rounds, you can say that the rounds are close. But Kai Kara France put out the higher volume. There was one takedown into a deep submission attempt. Even so, Kara France reversed it and ended the round on top, doing some heavy damage, including drawing a huge blow. I still think Albazi won that round. That's the one that I gave him. But I don't think there's really an argument that can be made for him winning any of the other rounds. I will say that round 3 actually was a little bit closer. So scratch that. 3-2. I'm okay with 3-2. Still Kai Kara France winning. I don't see a scenario in which he loses. If this was a 3-round fight, I think Amir Albazi wins. Definitely that round was a little bit closer, but I can see that argument. So, all right, I could give him 2, I could give him 3, but one of the judges gave him 1, one was really slow. The pacing was a little off. Neither guy really did a lot, but I would give round 1 to Kara France due to volume alone. And round 4, I don't know what that guy was watching. I got to be honest with you. That one makes no sense to me. It's a combination of Chris Lee, Sal Diamato. And honestly, one of the biggest things to me was watching Adesanya's reaction. So Adesanya and Kai Kara France train in the same gym, and they both train out of New Zealand. Watching the reaction as soon as Bruce Buffer announced the judges scored, 49 or whatever the score was. The first one, Kai Kara France, he looks at the camera and he's like, I already know what's going to happen. And sure enough, it goes to split decision to Amir Albazi. Now, I think this is where one of my biggest frustrations with UFC, and one of the viewers' biggest frustrations with UFC is building, is that UFC has decided officially, at least it appears that way, they've decided that they are more an entertainment entity than a competitive sporting entity. And why I think this is the case is their focus is on not this fight, but the next fight. So if we look at the flyweight division and we look at the rankings in the flyweight division, we have Kai Kara France was obviously up there. He doesn't make sense as a challenger for the belt because he's already lost to Brandon Moreno. He lost the interim. And so if he's lost the interim, how then are you going to have him run it back right away, right? He hasn't really done anything to warrant running it back right away. And him, if he were to beat Albazi, that doesn't really give him that credibility to go back, right? Because you're beating a guy who's beneath you in the rankings. So if you look at the rankings, you have Brandon Moreno, Davison Figueiredo, who's moving up, doesn't really count. So then that gives you Pantoja, Kara France, Brandon Royval. And of course, this is before the rankings update, which will happen later tonight. Matthias Nicolau, Alex Perez, Amir Albazi, right? So if 3 beats 7, no big deal, right? that helps cement his place up there, but that doesn't really set up a next challenger. Whereas if 7 beats 3, he just beat someone that was previously a contender for the belt. So you can make the argument here that he has a decent claim for the next fight, whether that be... So Pantoja and Moreno have to fight. Whoever the winner is there, I think Amir Albazi gets the next fight. Now, I don't like this, but it makes perfect sense from an entertainment perspective, because if you look at what they're targeting, they would be targeting Abu Dhabi. Now, who's going to be a bigger draw for Abu Dhabi? Is it going to be their guy, Amir Albazi, originally from Iraq, or is it going to be Kai Kara France? Right? Which one of those guys is really going to help drive those numbers? And so in a way, it feels as if it's okay. If they could get away with this one, they were going to try to get away with this one. This one wasn't a fight that should have gone that way. If you look at Kai Kara France's face at the end of the round, he's all like smiles and like very respectful towards Albazi because he feels confident that he won. He was like, that's a great fight. It's a good fight. Neither guy could finish the other. They both took some heavy shots. Albazi had that one really, really great rear naked choke that I'm amazed he didn't finish. Great job by Kai Kara France being defensive there, fighting out of it, rolling out of it, getting top mount, and even inflicting more damage coming down. But it's just such a bad spot to be in. But honestly, the biggest loser here is Brandon Royval. So if we look, Brandon Royval has beaten Kai Kara France. So the first problem here is with the rankings. Brandon Royval should not be ranked lower than Kai Kara France. I don't care. He shouldn't be. He should have been the number 3 in the first place. Now what's going to happen is I bet you Amir Albazi leapfrogs Brandon Royval and gets his belt chance, because the next fight, theoretically, could be in Abu Dhabi. Now, I'm not saying that that's guaranteed, because that is kind of a quick turnaround, but we've seen fast turnarounds for these championship fights. I'm thinking about, off the top of my head, the turnaround here for Aljamain Sterling, right? That's going to be quick for UFC Boston. And I understand that, like, I want to see Sterling and Sean O'Malley fight, and I think O'Malley fits great with that Boston crowd. O'Malley's a good fit for the Boston crowd. Albazi is a great fit for the Abu Dhabi crowd. That gives them opportunities to set up potential fights down the line, especially depending on what happens with Beneil Dariush next week at UFC 289. Or 89? Is that right? Yeah, at 289. Right, so if Beneil Dariush is able to win, then that gives another chance for a Muslim fighter to get a better setup. So, or am I wrong here? Is Beneil Dariush? I think that might actually be. Yeah. I was wrong. Okay, so Beneil Dariush, they probably don't want to put on Abu Dhabi again. This one was actually funny. I had it in the back of my head and I couldn't remember why. The Beneil Dariush fight was after winning. You could hear the whole crowd cheering for him, and then he turns around and just says, like, thanks his Lord Jesus Christ, and the whole crowd goes silent in Abu Dhabi. So maybe not Beneil Dariush. Maybe we look for an opportunity with Islam Makhachev. Maybe we look for something with Khamzat Chimaev. Definitely not Beneil Dariush. I don't think he'll fight in Abu Dhabi again. As soon as he said that, I was like, this man's not making it out of the country alive. Luckily, he made it back. But that was one of the most interesting crowd reactions I've ever seen. Just the whole crowd go silent, and you could feel the tension. It was like, oh, God, shut up, please. But I honestly, like, this sucks for Brandon Royval, right? His last fight, that was Brandon Royval versus Matheus Nicolau. Brandon Royval was on the freaking prelim. Now, Ryan and I were pissed about this when we were talking about this on the pod last time. Ridiculous that fight was on a prelim. He had a huge knockout, won in convincing fashion. He should have the next title shot. It's ridiculous that he doesn't. Right? And you even have the ability to market that fight because you have, he has lost to, so let's see, he has beaten Nicolau, he's beaten Schnell, he's beaten Bontorin, he lost against Pantoja, and he lost against Moreno. But he's beaten Kara France, right? So whoever the winner is, and he's beaten Elliott. If we look at that. He has beaten everyone in this division except for the cream of the crop. Now that they are back at the top, this is the perfect opportunity to run that back. Second fight for the belt. You have the storyline built there. Yeah, Amir Albazi is a great story. I think he is a good fighter, and he definitely showed that he belongs. Almost getting the finish, too, on Kai Kara-France. So, I mean, respect. I don't think he won that fight, but I do think he belongs in the upper echelon of that division. But I think he needs to have one more fight before he can really claim the belt, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think the UFC is going to rush him. I think that he's going to get the Abu Dhabi card. And there's a chance that, like, if I'm in the flyweight division and I see that, and I see that fight, and I see him making the call up for Abu Dhabi, and I see him making the call for the belt, I'm looking at that as if I draw that fight, I can't let it go to decision. Because you can't say that they're not going to be biased there. I remember having a lot of problems with the decisions in Abu Dhabi last time, and with an opportunity for them to get, their guy the belt. I think we've got some highly questionable motives here, and with Dana pushing hard for that expansion into more Saudi Arabian money, especially, that's something to keep an eye on. I don't love how that fight went. I understand why it went that way, but I'm still pissed about it. That was a little bit bullshit. Kai Kara-France got robbed, and I just think that this was a decision that was made for the benefit of entertainment, not and the benefit of the bottom line, not because of competitive sporting. And so we just kind of have to accept that that's where the UFC is right now. And it's an annoying spot because you're in this weird tension of you have a lot of fans who have been around for a while, a lot of fans who have been watching since it was. Let's find out who's the best practitioner of each martial art. Which martial art stands up to the others? Which one is the best martial art? And it's evolved into, okay, now everybody's incorporated a little bit of that into their training. So now who's the best mixed martial artist? And to now, who's the most marketable name that we can have? And I mean, even looking at it, right? They acquire the WWE. UFC is going to go more and more WWE and less competitive fighting. And that leaves fans with an interesting choice. You could like the entertainment value of it, just knowing that even though the judges can play a role, there's still always that chance. There's that puncher's chance, right? Something crazy could happen. You could get that KO out of nowhere. You could get a snatch submission out of nowhere. Those things could happen. There could be room for upsets, but I think we're going to start moving into that territory where if you leave it in the judges' hands, they're going to make the decision that's best for the promotion, not for the fighters. And I don't know how that sits with me yet. I'll have to watch a few more to see if they clean it up, but it seems to be particularly bad in the UFC Apex. And this brings me back to the point that I've talked about this before. I hate the UFC Apex. It's one of the most boring, like god-awful environments in all of UFC. It's tiny. It's quiet. Like, yeah, it's cool to hear what the coaches are yelling from the sidelines, but the fact that there's no audience, like, that must suck. Imagine having a huge win, a massive win in your career, and it's in the fucking Apex where no one's fucking watching. Like, even the viewership is terrible. It's cool that UFC is bringing us these fights. It's awesome that they're free if you have ESPN Plus. But realistically, that's not. It's not it. They need to find something here, and they need to stop getting these weird Vegas commissions that are letting these bullshit decisions go the way they do. That being said, there were some great fights on this card. I think the card is going to be remembered in a negative way because of the ending, but there were a lot of good things on here. So the fight of the night at featherweight, which was amazing, was Alex Caceres, Daniel Pineda. If you haven't watched this is easily one of my fight of the year candidates. So both of these guys showed an absolute masterclass on the ground, with Pineda almost getting several different submissions and Caceres just showing the perfect defense to each and every single one, getting himself out of trouble and picking Pineda apart on the feet. If you didn't listen last week when we previewed, because I uploaded late because I'm an idiot, so Pineda has 28 wins. All 28 of those wins are by decision. And at several points, it looked like he was going to, or not by decision, by stoppage, whether that's submission or KO. It looked at so many times like he had Caceres in nasty spots, and Caceres was able to weasel his way out. And, I mean, talking about career revival here, Alex Caceres is made a huge comeback in his last few fights. So ever since he beat Hooper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think he's actually won, like, he lost to Kron Gracie. So I think he's won 7 now of his last 8 fights. Like, this is a guy who was hovering right around that 500 mark before ripping off this absolutely enormous run through some really tough challengers. And he put his rank on the line, fighting down. He was number 15 guy. He's fighting down. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a little bit more love, but that division is so stacked. Like, at 15, I don't think he can really go up. The only thing, like, maybe you make it, I don't know, you can't even put him over Barboza, because Barboza's most recent fight was a KO, and it was very emphatic. And then the only thing maybe is if number 13 Dan Ige loses on this card on 289, maybe he gets a bump up, but that's not going to happen for a little while. But even still, he's fine. It's so tough. That division is tough, but it's great to see that late career resurgence. And against a guy like Pineda, who's a warrior, I mean, Caceres landed a huge liver kick that would have and has knocked out incredible fighters just from the pain of it. And Pineda just kept going. And Caceres was like, okay, I got to be careful here because he's still dangerous. Like, this is a guy who, even though, yeah, he's a submissions guy, he does still have 9 knockouts. He's got huge power in his hand. And he almost caught Caceres at the very end of the fight. Watching that back and forth was crazy. I couldn't tell who I was rooting for. To be honest, I wanted Caceres to win. But then seeing Pineda, like, gut it out in the end, he took a lever kick, he took a lever punch, he took a ton of body shots where you could visibly tell, like, the ref's telling him to fight back because he's having to take deep breaths to try and work his way through it. And then he almost catches Caceres at the end. Caceres admitted it. He was like, yeah, I slipped for a second. I started to not be 100% locked in for a second, and Pineda was right there. So absolute warrior. Great fight that these two put on. Easily one of my fight of the year candidates, and one that I'll probably revisit at some point later when we do a review. We have next up the other. So that was the fight of the night. And the performances of the night and a couple other fights I wanted to highlight as well. The performance of the night, Jim Miller with a 23-second knockout against Jesse Butler. So Jesse Butler came in at the last minute, was not originally who Jim Miller was supposed to fight, came in on 2 days' notice. We've actually seen lately we've seen these replacement fighters come in and do really well. That was not the case here. Jim Miller absolutely starched Jesse Butler in 23 seconds. Jim Miller plans to fight till UFC 300, and realistically, I could see it. I mean, he looked great. That's his 7th knockout win. Not really a guy known for the knockouts, right? 7 wins by knockout now, 19 wins by submission. But how long has it been since his last KO? So I'm looking down. Okay, I guess 2022, he did have a knockout. So I'll give him that. I felt like it was... He actually had a string of a few. The way that everyone reacted, it seemed like Miller hadn't KO'd anyone in a long, long time. But that's just simply not true. Either way, still very, 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 very impressive fight for him. The guy wants to be around till UFC 300. And honestly, he's still showing that he's got it. He parried the... basically, like, if you ever played Street Fighter, it was basically a Street Fighter parry. What's this guy's name? Butler threw a punch. He just kind of slapped it aside and then just boom, one tap. Good night, Jesse Butler. Hopefully, I mean, let's give Jesse Butler some props. It's tough getting into the ring on 2 days' notice, or in the octagon on 2 days' notice. It's tough going against somebody like Jim Miller, who's been around for so long, is an absolute legend of the UFC. And it's tough to get knocked out in 23 seconds. And it was scary, too, because he was out. Like, it wasn't like a TKO. He was out cold. And it was ugly. That was his first fight in the UFC. Hopefully, Dana keeps him around, gives him, like, another 1 or 2, just as a thank you for stepping in a tough spot. But if you're a Jesse Butler fan, that was not an easy one to watch. If you're friends or family of Jesse Butler, that was not an easy one to watch. But great win for Jim Miller, putting him back in the books and earning himself performance of the night bonus there. Got to be happy with that. This one didn't win any fight of the night or any honors really, and it also brings up an interesting point for me to shit on the Apex even more. So I definitely wanted to touch on this. But this was Tim Elliott, Victor Altamirano. Tim Elliott won convincingly. It was, in my opinion, I think it was all 10-9 rounds. I can't remember what the judges' scorecards were. Let's see. But he absolutely controlled the fight the entire time. There was no question about it. And he easily won. Let's see what do we got for the cards here. And Victor Altamirano, I think, is somebody who is up and coming. I don't think this is I don't think this is the end for him. But he definitely needs to start stringing together some wins here. Maybe take a step down in competition, maybe move around and wait. But he got absolutely manhandled by Tim Elliott. Yeah, this one was weird. I remember this. So, 2 judges had 30-27s. I had it 30-27, but Chris Lee had it 29-28. I guess maybe that should have been foreshadowing. Because I don't know what Chris Lee saw to give Altamirano round 2. I just don't think he had it. So that, I don't know. I didn't love that. Let's see. I want to look at all of his decisions that night. So yeah, Chris Lee had the controversial Amir Albazi winning 2-3-4. Everybody had 2 and 3 for Amir Albazi. The difference was that Chris Lee gave Albazi 4, and Sal D'Amato gave Albazi 1. I think 1 you have a better argument than 4, if I'm being honest. I think Sal D'Amato has a better argument there. I just don't agree. And that's fine. It happens. But that should not have happened with Chris Lee. Let's see. Yeah, everything else was exactly in line for the rest of his. The other one was Daniel Santos, Johnny Muniz, which was 10-9s the entire time, except for the fact that he got penalized. Yep, right in line with everyone else there. Right in line with everyone else there. Right in line with everyone else there. Yeah, so it was just like that should have been the precursor. You should have known the fix was on early. The fix was on early. That was ugly. But that fight, I will say that Tim Elliott had a great fight. One thing that he brought up, which was really interesting, I saw this on Twitter after the fact. He flew family out there, and UFC didn't tell him that the tickets for the Apex weren't comped. Now, if you're not familiar with like the Apex, you would think that, oh, hey, if I'm out in Vegas, I could go, catch a show at the UFC Apex, right? It can't be that expensive. It'd be ridiculous to think that a UFC Apex fight would be, big money. Yeah. UFC Apex starts at $1,500 per person. So Tim Elliott flew people out there, couldn't get tickets to his own fight, and wasn't able to have people in there. But $1,500 per person? I'm sorry, but you're out of your mind. You are absolutely out of your fucking mind. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Like, you can go to an event, right? You can go to UFC Jacksonville. This is a UFC fight night in Jacksonville. This is going to be, in my opinion, a really good fight, and I'm looking forward to it. Their premier package. This is ticket and hospitality, right? So this is official UFC fight night ticket, premium floor level seats, happy hour and fighter meet and greet, post-fight octagon experience, a dedicated VIP entrance, reserved seat at the ceremonial weigh-ins, and then you get a weigh-in meet and greet. So you get 2 meet and greets with fighters, you get a ring experience, you get premier seats right down at the level, right? That's $1,000. You can't tell me that the UFC Apex delivers a better experience than that and still costs $500 more. That's absolutely ridiculous. UFC London, they have packages starting at $675, right? Less than half the cost. Now, there are, I will say that like the champion, the biggest one that they have, the biggest package they have, that's $2,500. So that's not cheap, right? But if you look at, you just want tickets, right? Sections. This is sections 100 for their seats, right? Now there's a limit that you could also be tapped to the 400 level. I'm assuming the earlier you reserve, the better. But again, these are VIP packages, not regular tickets. VIP packages. So the UFC Apex one, what it gets you rows 2 to 3. It gives you all-inclusive hospitality and the UFC Octagon experience. Red carpet arrival, UFC VIP concierge staff, dedicated in-seat servers, right? Like, it's a tiny venue. Yeah, it gives you some cool stuff. Yeah, you're up close to the action. But even seats rows 2 and 3 are not really that close. They're really not. And like, it's such a small venue, there's not a lot of people. I just feel like the environment is off. Like, you're paying that big of money for fucking nothing, dude. Like, you're in a warehouse. The UFC fights that they had in like the ballrooms of hotels were higher quality than the UFC Apex fights. Those environments were just better. I don't understand the idea there, but like, that sucks for Tim Elliott, right? Brings his whole family out there and then is told that he has to pay for tickets. What? Okay. Absolutely ridiculous. Congrats on the win, though. Flyweight, like I said, it's an absolute mess because there's all sorts of stuff happening, but hopefully Tim Elliott might be able to crack in at the bottom half of there. So let's see. We got flyweight. Yeah, he's already at 11. For some reason, they didn't put his rank on the UFC website, so I had to go and look it up. Good. Why would you give the man some respect? But that's a big fight for him being able to keep his rank, and good for him taking a fight further down. Hopefully next time he can take a fight looking up. I know he's coming off. He was coming off of a loss, I think, and his record is 20-12. So it's not like he's got this. Oh no, he had a win, but he lost against Nicolau in 2021. Which, looking at that loss, he's lost against Nicolau and Royval. Those losses have aged really well. Those are two guys at the very, very top of the division. So that shows that he belongs right up in there. So again, hopefully that gets better, and maybe once he cracks the top 10, Dana will comp him some tickets because that's absolute dog shit. Continuing on with the fight here, the other one that I wanted to highlight, Andrei Arlovsky got absolutely slept. That one was pretty ugly, but not the fight I want to talk about. The next one that's going to have some pretty big implications. So Jamie Mullarkey, his fight originally, he was the biggest underdog on the card. The guy he was scheduled to fight had to pull out, and he was replaced by Muhammad Naimov. That then made Mullarkey the biggest favorite on the card. And round one, things were looking good. He won on all three judges' scorecards, 10-9. Round two, he got knocked the fuck out. So Muhammad Naimov came to play. So if you didn't watch the stream, you didn't see that there were two fighters from Tajikistan, and this is a really big up-and-coming region that I think they need to tap more for UFC. They sold out a stadium, just to shit on the Apex some more. They sold out a stadium in Tajikistan to watch their two guys fight at 4 a.m. in the morning there. So it's 4 a.m. local time. They're there, packed out in a massive stadium to watch. Cheering, yelling, screaming, way better environment than the Apex, right? The fighters aren't even there. And it's a better fight environment than the UFC Apex. Just want to throw that out there. Maybe throw those guys a bone and give them a fight on home turf. Because, like, if you want raucous crowds, if you want big sales, if you want, like, sell out a soccer stadium, you could do that there. Tajikistan is huge right now for UFC. You could get a lot of fighters from that part of the world on there, and that would sell like crazy. I don't understand how you don't have that. And this guy, Muhammad Naimov, needs to be kept. This is a guy who's coming in. This was replacement fighter, very short notice. He has a 9-2 record now. Came in and absolutely starched Mullarkey. And Mullarkey is a tough guy. Always puts on a good fight. Always willing to stand and throw. He's now 16-6. This kind of puts him in a bad spot. If he had won that fight, maybe he has a chance at top 15. But Mullarkey was just coming off a 2-fight win streak. Was probably looking to make it 3 with a kind of a walkover. I don't know if he just like didn't have the time to prep for the guy or what, but he did He looked great in round one and just couldn't. Like, it came out of nowhere, really. And Naimov, the shorter reach, was the shorter guy, still got inside, hit him with a little check hook, and it was donezo. Now, Malarkey tried to say that he wasn't out, but he was not together. It was a great stoppage. I had no qualms at all whatsoever with the referees in this one, which is weird because normally that's my big problem. But they did everything that I've been asking them to do lately. So, maybe they've been listening. Dana steals my picks, referees steal my advice, and the UFC gets better for it. Now, all we need to see happen is we need to see these fights go where I want them to. So, with the rest of this, we're looking at another big fight on here is Damon Blackshear and Luan Lacerda. These two guys look to put on an absolute masterclass in jiu-jitsu, and what happened instead was Damon Blackshear got the KO. If you're not familiar with Damon Blackshear as a fighter, he's a guy that Dana White has highlighted. He's a very exciting guy. This was his first knockout victory. Not really a thing that he's known for. And him coming in, he had lost to Basharat. He had drawn in his first fight. And so this for him was really important to get back in, to get into the win column, prove that he belongs in the UFC, and hopefully make a push up in the bantamweight division. Exciting guy, especially if he's got that punching power. He needs to harness that because that was kind of a new side to him he hasn't shown, and that's going to give him a lot of success here in the bantamweight division, obviously filled with a lot of good punchers. Again, a tough division all the way through. With Umar Nurmagomedov losing, that potentially gives him a chance to have a fight with him that could get him cracking into the top 15. So that gives him that opportunity there to say, hey, give me a guy who's on his way down. It was Abubakar who lost. Never mind, not Umar. My bad. Wrong division. Find a guy who has lost and maybe get an opportunity for him to fight up and crack into that top 15. I don't think he's there. I think he needs one more fight. But this is a guy who is very exciting and someone that Dana White is obviously trying to build. And we've seen, obviously, coming back to our conversation at the top, was with Albazi. He takes the guys that he likes and he promotes them to spots that maybe they shouldn't be. And that's a tough spot to look at, but Blackshear could be the benefit of that here. Looking ahead now to UFC 289. This one is extremely exciting. I mean, anytime Amanda Nunes fights, it's must-watch television. That's a fact. This is going to be great. I mean, I honestly think the talk about Amanda Nunes is a little disrespectful. People call her the greatest women's fighter of all time. I think she needs to be put into the greatest fighter of all time category, just alone. Like, one of the greatest to ever do it. Name me another fighter who has not only won belts in multiple divisions, but defended them simultaneously. I'll wait. It's because there isn't. If you're doing something that is absolutely legendary, to the point of, and like the success that she has had for so long with it, is absolutely ridiculous. She is fighting the best of the best women's fighters that come from both divisions, and she is making quick work of those divisions. 22-5 doesn't tell the whole story. 13 wins by knockout, 14 first-round finishes, and 4 submissions doesn't tell the whole story. She is absolutely must-watch television and should always be something you tune into. Now, obviously, she just won her belt back with Pena after having lost it to her. This is an opportunity for her to continue defending. Is that even the same belt? Let's see. That's bantamweight, and this fight will be bantamweight. Okay, so it is the same belt. I had to double check and make sure it's the same belt. So she's, again, fighting to defend that belt for the second time around, having regained it. And this would be her first title defense of the women's belt, or the bantamweight belt again. Then after that, the next big fight is the Beneil Dariush-Charles Oliveira fight. I saw some real concerning news, and it tricked me for a split second, was that Oliveira was going to have to pull out due to a hernia from carrying this card so hard. Again, I think Nunes is the draw here. It's definitely the draw for me, but Oliveira versus Dariush is going to be a huge fight. It's going to be a contender-eliminator fight here. If Dariush is serious and wants to move into that opportunity to get into the title conversation, I mean, he's got some people he's got to jump, but a win against Oliveira gets him in that conversation. I mean, there's still Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje ahead of him, but if he beats the number one guy, that could possibly set up a shot with him and Makhachev, while Poirier and Gaethje are fighting over the BMF belt. The rest of the card, honestly, as I'm looking through it, I'm kind of more interested in the prelims, if I'm honest with you. If I wanted to highlight one fight, Chris Curtis is fighting on this card. Middleweight is always a solid fight. And then there's light heavyweight. What's really interesting here is you got Khalil Roundtree, who has looked really, really good since training in Thailand and building up his Muay Thai. He's coming in and fighting Chris Daukaus. Now, if that seems confusing to you, it's because Daukaus is typically billed as a heavyweight. Chris Daukaus is cutting down to light heavy in order for this fight. So I'm curious to see how he looks. Chris Daukaus is a big power puncher, hasn't had a ton of success in heavyweight, doesn't really have a route up through heavyweight. So if he goes down to that light heavyweight role, we'll see how that power plays. That tends to go one of two ways. It's never really kind of like a meh. It's either the power is sapped because the cut is so hard, they look awful, and they get absolutely blasted by a strong striker. Or the cut is exactly what they needed to beef up their cardio, and now all of a sudden they look like a more well-rounded fighter who can go the distance more consistently, and that allows them to pick opponents apart in a strategic fashion, not just relying on that big one knockout punch that's going to sap all their energy, but allow them to set up combinations and build from those. So those are the last two fights of the prelim. Those are the most interesting to me that are on here. It's a little weird with how light the early prelims are. And again, we see a ranked flyweight guy in the prelims, the early prelims, not just regular prelims. I swear that Dana hates the flyweight division, but it is what it is. David Dvorak fighting. The guy he's fighting has no information on the UFC website, so I didn't get a chance to look at this before this guy's name was on here. I wonder if he's a replacement fighter. It's a possibility there. But that'd be bad if you're the number 10 guy and you lose to a replacement fighter. So that one has at least some story and intrigue there. So looking at UFC 289, honestly, this probably is not one that I buy. This will probably be another situation where Ryan and I end up at like Buffalo Wild Wings watching this one and getting the fight for free with a good dinner there. But this is just not as awesome and like stacked as those last two fights are going to be. There's a lot that I'd probably overlook here. Nate Landwehr's fighting. Again, Nate Landwehr, it gets all the love from the UFC. He's had a ridiculous amount of fights lately. His last one, he got a submission. I swear to God, he got knocked out recently. He definitely got knocked out recently. I don't know what that's about. I don't remember that being the case. I thought that he had gotten knocked out. Maybe I'm thinking of a different fighter. But that seems weird. I could have sworn that he got knocked out. No, I guess not. Alright, maybe I'm losing my mind. Oh, you know what it was? Was that his fight got... I don't know. I'm losing my mind. I must be thinking of a different fighter. Yeah, because his last loss was back in 2021 to Julian Erosa. So it's been a while since he's lost. But he's on the uptick, so him going against the number 13 guy, that gives him an opportunity to potentially break into these rankings here and go on a run. So that one also has some intrigue. So yeah, again, this card is extremely top heavy. I don't think it'll be a bad card. I just don't know that it's one that I am going to pay money for. But I'm excited, UFC 289, and this kicks off what will be a series. So last week was the first of 11 consecutive weeks that we were going to have UFC events. So after UFC 289, we have Vettori versus Cannonier fight night, Emmett Topuria fight night, Strickland versus Magomedov fight night, then Volkanovski Rodriguez for UFC 290. That's the double belt. So that's UFC 290, Volkanovski Rodriguez, Moreno Pantoja. That one's going to be amazing. That's the one where I'm going to pay to watch that one because I want to watch it in the comfort of my home. And after spending all that money on the pay-per-view, I have to save money on the beer, so I'll have to do that at home. Then you have UFC Fight Night, Holly Holm getting another Fight Night appearance. This time she is getting the main card. That one, if I were to take a look at it right now, it looks a little weak. They're going to add some more fights to it. Hopefully they can get a little bit more quality in there. UFC Fight Night, Aspinall Tybura. This one's going to be absolutely stacked event. Some really good fighters on here. Maybe not household names, but really good fighters nevertheless. And we're going to see some action here. This is a lot of UK fighters versus a lot of US fighters. So we're going to have this is at O2 in London. And obviously Aspinall's return can very much change the heavyweight division and the landscape of the heavyweight division. Then obviously at UFC 291 you got Poirier and Gaethje 2. That one's going to be absolutely jaw-dropping again. And then we have Blachowicz and Pereira on that fight as well. Tony Ferguson, Bobby Green, Paulo Costa, Ikram Aliskerov, Stephen Thompson, Michel Pereira, Derek Lewis, Marcos Rogerio de Lima, Michael Chiesa, Kevin Holland, Matthew Semmelsberger, who honestly should have won that last fight. So him getting another fight is awesome. You have Claudio Ribeiro, Trevin Giles. This has got a really stacked fight too. So there's a ton. Like realistically, if we look at 289 versus 290 and 291, 289 is the weakest of them, which seems crazy to say because 291 doesn't even have a title fight. But if we look at 289, it's the weakest among them. But I think two of the best fights are going to be on that card. So that's where it's weird. It's a very top-heavy card. Probably not one I'm buying. Probably one I'll go see in a restaurant for the more fun environment and the fact that the fight is free. But this kicks off a huge run in the UFC. I think we're going to see some really, really, really good weekends, and we're going to see some changes up in the division. I mean, we have a lot of fights here where the guys who are at the top of the division are going at it, and there's going to be someone who comes out of it. The Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier one strikes me as odd, though, only because realistically, who's next for Adesanya? Adesanya has beaten Vettori and Cannonier convincingly. He's also beaten Whitaker. So the hope here is that Dricus du Plessis is able to pull off the win here. But if things don't go exactly the way Dana wants, it's going to get real ugly in that division unless Adesanya moves around. But we'll worry about that after seeing the results of Cannonier Vettori. For now, we're going to look forward to UFC 289. And we'll bring you all the review for that. We'll come back with a little bit of action. We're gonna talk some Ultimate Fighter as well. I want Ryan's opinion on the Ultimate Fighter, so we'll talk about that next week as well. So make sure you tune in for that. All the recap of 289 and the recap of the first 2 weeks of the Ultimate Fighter. So we're gonna have a stacked episode next week. And that it won't just be me talking, and it won't be my daughter interrupting, even though I've told her to go to bed 50 freaking times already. Go to bed. I don't care that you're not sleepy. Go to bed. All right. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.